I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Dr. Maya Angelou was born April 4th, 1928, and lived up to a couple years ago. And she is quite the character. She is considered one of the most renowned and influential voices of our time. And she is hailed as a global Renaissance woman. She does have a global consciousness, has traveled the globe. um, Dr. Langelo was a celebrated poet, memoirist, novelist, educator, dramatist, producer, actress, historian, filmmaker, and civil rights activist. So there's not much that she hasn't done. In her early life, she was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and raised in St. Louis and Stamps, Arkansas. She jockeyed between both of those places with her family. And when she lived in Stamps, Arkansas, she really kind of lived two different lives, and she had to experience the brutality of racial discrimination, but she also absorbed this faith and these values of traditional African American family, community, and culture, primarily through her grandmother, but also through the church there in Stamps. And we're going to see a number of instances where this takes shape. Um, as a teenager, her love for the arts won her a scholarship to study dance and drama at San Francisco's Labor School. And so later she does go to San Francisco. She drops out at age 14, and she decides that she wants to run a cable car. And she will not take no for an answer. She becomes the first African American female cable car conductor. If you've ever been to San Francisco, just imagine a young 14-year-old girl trying to pull that lever and stop that cable car going down the hill for those cables. It takes a lot of strength, and she definitely has a lot of tenacity. She later finished high school, giving birth to her son Guy a few weeks after graduation. So she was a teen mom. And as a young single mother, she supported her son by working as a waitress and a cook. Her passion for music and dance and performance never died, though, and she wrote several poems. And later in her life, as she delved in this world of presentation and language, and it would take center stage in her life. She toured Europe with the production of the opera Porgy and Bess in 1954 and 1955. She did study modern dance with Martha Graham and Alvin Ailey on television variety shows. And by 1957, she had actually recorded an album, Calypso Lady. You can look that up. In 1958, she moves to New York and she joins the Harlem Writers Guild. Acted in the historic off-Broadway production of Jean Genet's The Blacks, and wrote and performed Cabaret of Freedom. So a number of things that she did. In 1960, she moved to Cairo, Egypt, where she served as editor of the English language weekly, The Arab Observer. And then she moves to Ghana, where she taught at the University of Ghana School of Music and Drama, and worked as feature editor for the African Review and wrote for the Ghanaian Times. It was during this time that she was able to, in some ways, I believe, connect to her roots, I suppose you could say, but more than that, was able to become a real globalist. And she studied voraciously. She mastered French and Spanish and Italian, Arabic, and the West African language Fanti. When she was in Ghana, she met Malcolm X, and in 1964 returned to America to help build this new organization of African American unity, which became very controversial in many circles and very polarizing, bringing people to one side of an issue. But it's during this civil rights movement that she writes and that she performs. After her arrival in the United States, Malcolm X was assassinated, and the organization, of course, dissolved. Dr. Martin Luther King took center stage after that and asked Dr. Angelou to serve as Northern coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She had a very significant role during the civil rights movement. King's assassination, though, actually fell on her birthday in 1968. That left her just devastated, obviously, for a number of reasons, for the cause that she stood behind, but clearly she had a great love for Dr. King, as did many others. She wrote several books, and the book that we're going to read is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And James Baldwin helped her with this first book. And it was this first book that really that really probably makes her more famous now than anything else. But in 1970, it's published, and it receives international acclaim and enormous popular success. The list of her published verse, nonfiction and fiction now includes more than 30 best-selling titles. And some of those we'll see in a moment. She also was a trailblazer in film and television, and she wrote the screenplay and composed a score for the 1972 film Georgia, Georgia. Her script, the first by an African American woman ever to be filled, was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. She continued to appear on televisions, and she also appeared in the film, including the landmark television adaptation of Alex Haley's Roots in 1977. And John Singleton's Poetic Justice in 1993. In 1996, she directed her first feature film, Down in the Delta. So she also became a director, film director. She composed poetry for and narrated the award-winning documentary, The Black Candle, directed by M.K. Asante Jr. She has a number of poems, many of which we're going to read. She did receive, she served on 2 presidential committees. And she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Arts in 2000. The Lincoln Medal in 2008 and has received 3 Grammy Awards. President Clinton requested that she compose a poem to read at his inauguration in 1993. And Dr. Engel's reading of her poem on the Postal Morning was broadcast live around the world. She's received over 30 honorary degrees and is Reynolds Professor of American Studies at Wake Forest University. Her words are still stirring those in our country. Although she passed in 2014, her words are still energizing and still liberating. And you would even seen her in the past several years appearing as she does there in the photograph with Oprah Winfrey and others. She has a number of books in her autobiographical series, what we call an autobiographical novel. This is a new genre that she created. It's not quite memoir, but it's not novel. It's autobiographical. Some of the details are embellished, perhaps, or added for effect. But in any case, it starts with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and then it moves through her life. And so as you read the first book, you must realize that this is actually not going to take us all the way through her life. She writes a number of books after that. And here's a number that she writes as well. Here's a collection of poetry, Still I Rise, and a number of other books and collections. There are several themes and motifs in the book, and this is the last thing I want you to record. Racism and segregation are throughout the entire text. The theme of debilitating displacement, this idea that she feels out of place, and she doesn't feel that she belongs in many places, and we're going to see that lack of belonging and that desire and what it does to her. Resistance to racism, and she resists racism throughout the United States. We're also going to see this theme of strong Black women, probably primarily through her and her mother, but also through her grandmother. A real string of fortitude throughout the text, and this idea of literature and the importance of reading, and the power of the written text. And lastly, the importance of naming. Okay, this concludes the short tutorial.